The rain began as a soft whisper, a gentle mist that settled over the ancient stone streets of the film set. For Xiao Zhan, it was a cruel twist of fate. His night shoot, already stretching into the unforgiving hours before dawn, was a brutal, physically demanding scene. His character, a warrior in a historical epic, was supposed to be exhausted, defeated. It wasn't hard to act. The air was a bone-chilling cold, and a quiet, profound weariness had settled in his bones. His only source of warmth. His phone, a jarringly modern rectangle of light in a pre-modern world, buzzed in his pocket. It was Wang Yibo. The thought of him, warm and dry in his apartment, was both a comfort and a sharp pang of longing. "Don't wait up," Xiao Zhan mumbled into the receiver, his voice hoarse from shouting his lines. "It's a mess out here. Just go to bed." There was a quiet hum on the other end, a long, understanding silence. "Okay," Yibo's voice finally came, low and steady. "Just stay safe." The line went dead. Xiao Zhan sighed, a plume of white air in the darkness, and slipped the phone away. He felt the familiar pang of guilt, wishing he didn't have to keep a loved one waiting. Just as the director called for the next take, a powerful gust of wind swept through the set. A torrential downpour began, a sudden, angry assault that turned the dust to thick mud. The crew scrambled, grabbing tarps and covers. From a small, shuttered window of a set building, Xiao Zhan watched the chaos unfold. The rain was a gray curtain, obscuring the world. But for a fleeting moment, as a gust of wind parted the rain, he saw something strange. A figure was standing just outside the massive wooden gate of the set, a solitary silhouette holding a large, black umbrella. It looked like a crew member who couldn't get in, but the stillness of the figure was unsettling. He stood perfectly still, facing the set, a silent, unwavering statue in the storm. Xiao Zhan blinked, and the figure was lost again to the driving rain. He dismissed it as a trick of the light, a figment of his exhausted imagination. The hours that followed were a blur of soaking wet costumes, shivering hands, and shouted directions. The downpour didn't let up. It only grew more violent, the sound of the rain on the rooftops a thunderous, relentless roar. Finally, as the first hint of gray light touched the horizon, the director called, "Cut!" for the last time. Xiao Zhan, numb with cold and fatigue, was the last to leave. He peeled off his mud-caked boots, handed his drenched costume to a waiting assistant, and pulled on a heavy coat. The entire crew had already packed up and left, their vans vanishing into the darkness of the morning. He walked to the massive wooden gate, his steps heavy with exhaustion. He pushed the gate open and was about to step out when he froze. The world outside was an empty, waterlogged street, a vast sheet of rippling gray under the relentless rain. And there, standing precisely where the mysterious figure had been hours ago, was Wang Yibo. He wasn't in a car, or standing under a shelter. He was standing on the curb, his clothes plastered to his frame, a large, black umbrella held steady over his head. The water streamed down the umbrella, cascading over his arms, soaking his shoes and trousers. He was absolutely drenched. But his expression was what sent a shockwave through Xiao Zhan's entire body. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't fidgeting. His gaze was fixed on the gate, calm and serene, as if he had all the time in the world. He was just waiting. "What are you doing?" Xiao Zhan whispered, the question a hoarse gasp of disbelief. "I told you to go home. It's been raining for hours." Yibo didn't move. He simply extended the umbrella towards Xiao Zhan, his gaze never leaving his face. "I know," he said, his voice a low, steady rumble that cut through the sound of the rain. "I'm sorry. I needed to be here." Xiao Zhan, feeling a surge of emotion that threatened to buckle his knees, finally stepped out under the shelter of the umbrella, standing so close that he could feel the cold radiating from Yibo's wet clothes. "But why?" he asked, his voice shaking. This was the mind-blowing part, the core of the story, the profound truth that transcended a simple romantic gesture. Yibo took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Xiao Zhan's with a profound, disarming honesty. "A few years ago," he began, "I was in a very bad place. The stress, the expectations, it was too much. One night, I just walked out into a storm like this one. I felt so completely alone, like I was the only person in the world. I was just standing there, in the pouring rain, and all I could think was that I wished someone was with me. Just with me. Not in the same city, not in the same building, but just sharing the storm from a distance. He paused, a tiny, sad smile touching his lips. I didn't want you to feel like that tonight. I wasn't waiting for you. I was waiting with you. I wanted you to know that even when you were alone, in the dark, in the pouring rain, you weren't really alone. I was here. I was standing with you. The umbrella wasn't just protection from the rain. It was a silent, beautiful statement. It was a promise that he would be a steady, unwavering presence, a lighthouse in the storm. He hadn't just waited, he had shared a moment of profound loneliness from a distance, so that Xiao Zhan would never have to feel it himself. Tears, hot and sudden, streamed down Xiao Zhan's face, mixing with the cold rain. He leaned into Wang Yibo, his head resting against his shoulder, his body trembling not from the cold, but from the raw, overwhelming power of this simple, selfless act of love. The umbrella, the rain, the freezing cold, it was no longer a miserable, isolating experience. It was the most intimate, most breathtaking moment of his life. Was no longer an adversary. It was a familiar, comforting presence. The wipers hummed a steady rhythm, a soundtrack to their quiet. Inside the car, the air was warm, thick with the scent of damp clothes and a profound sense of peace. Wang Yibo sat beside him, still a little soaked, but his face held a serene calm that was more powerful than any warmth. Xiao Zhan, wrapped in a blanket from the car, felt the last of the cold recede from his bones, replaced by the overwhelming heat of emotion. He looked at Wang Yibo, at the man who had just stood in the rain for hours without complaint, and a single, stunning thought struck him. He wasn't just a partner. He was a silent, unshakable anchor in the chaos of his life. I saw you, Xiao Zhan whispered, his voice barely audible. I saw you from the window on set. A figure with a black umbrella. I thought it was a hallucination. Wang Yibo looked at him, his expression one of gentle surprise. That's why I stayed, he said, his voice low. I saw your face at the end of the call, and I knew. You felt it too, didn't you? That feeling of being alone in the storm. He reached over and gently took Xiao Zhan's hand, his fingers tracing the cold skin. I wanted to be there. I wasn't just waiting for you to finish work, I was sharing the storm with you. So you would know you weren't alone. The emotional weight of his words was immense. Xiao Zhan finally confessed what he hadn't dared to say before. I did feel alone, he admitted, his voice cracking with emotion. It was cold and endless, and I just wanted to go home. And then I saw that figure, and for a second, I just felt this little spark of hope. I didn't know it was you, but it was like someone was out there, fighting the rain with me. The mind-blowing reveal was that Yibo's silent vigil had, in a sense, worked before he even knew it. His act of empathy had transcended physical space and had already reached the person it was intended for. Months passed. The incident in the rain became a private, cherished memory, a sacred story told in hushed tones between them. The umbrella, now dried and clean, sat in a corner of Yibo's apartment, a silent testament to a night of profound understanding. Then came the next mind-blowing scene, a moment that showed the world the lesson they had learned. They were at a major industry event, a sprawling outdoor exhibition. The skies, uncharacteristically, opened up, and a sudden, chilly rain began to fall. The crowd groaned, and reporters scrambled for cover. A quick-thinking reporter, seeing them standing under a small overhang, asked a question that was part joke, part genuine inquiry. Gentlemen, what do you do when a storm hits unexpectedly, on and off set? The question was a softball, but Wang Yibo's answer was not what anyone expected. He looked at the rain, then at Xiao Zhan, and a genuine private smile touched his lips. He didn't have to think about it. He reached out and, with an instinct so natural it was breathtaking, gently placed his hand on the small of Xiao Zhan's back, a warm, reassuring presence. You just find your shelter, he said, his voice calm and steady. And you wait it out together. The words were simple, but the gesture was not. It was a physical manifestation of a lesson learned in the rain. It was a silent, profound confession, a visible echo of a promise made under a black umbrella. The cameras, this time, caught it. They saw the public display of quiet, unwavering support, a single touch that spoke of an entire story. The world, which had seen them as separate stars, now saw them as a single, unbreakable unit, capable of weathering any storm, together. The single, gentle touch on Xiao Zhan'S back at the outdoor event became the viral moment that defined their new reality. The cameras had captured it with breathtaking clarity, a silent, profound gesture that spoke 1,000 words. The public reaction was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The internet didn't erupt in frenzied speculation, it quieted into a collective, awed silence. The photo of Wang Yibo's hand, a warm and steady anchor on Xiao Zhan'S back, was captioned not with questions but with simple, poignant phrases: "He's their shelter, a love that waits, and he found his home." The umbrella from the rainy night, once a private symbol of their bond, had now found its physical manifestation in a touch, a public truth that everyone finally understood. In the quiet aftermath, away from the blinding lights and the noise, Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan saw the viral photo for the first time on a tablet screen. There was no panic, no frantic discussion of damage control. Just a shared, soft smile that spoke of a deep, secret satisfaction. It was as if a beautiful, private joke they had shared for months had finally been understood by the world. "They saw it," Xiao Zhan whispered, his voice full of wonder. Wang Yibo nodded, his eyes locked on the image. It wasn't just a picture of two men, it was a picture of a single, complete bond. The world was finally getting a glimpse of their truth, and the revelation wasn't a scandal, it was an act of pure, beautiful artistry. The next few weeks were a surreal transition. Their managers, once so cautious, now seemed to embrace this new, more open chapter. The public's reaction had been overwhelmingly positive, and it was impossible to ignore. But the most significant change wasn't in their public lives, it was in their private world. One evening, as they were unwinding at Wang Yibo's apartment, Xiao Zhan looked at him with a depth of emotion he hadn't fully processed until now. "That night," Xiao Zhan began, his voice soft, "you stood in the rain for me. I've always thought that was the most selfless, most romantic thing anyone has ever done. But now, I see it differently." This was the next mind-blowing scene, the final piece of the puzzle that made their love story so profound. Wang Yibo, who had been focused on a video game, paused the screen. He turned to Xiao Zhan, his gaze calm and steady. "That night wasn't just about me waiting for you," Wang Yibo said, his voice low and honest. "It was about me waiting for myself. I saw you, exhausted and alone in the storm, and I saw my past self. I saw the person I was a few years ago, feeling completely lost and unmoored in a world that was too big for me. That act of standing in the rain for you was an act of healing for me. I wanted to be the person who showed up for you in a way that no one had shown up for me. And when you walked out of that gate and into my arms, it wasn't just you finding your shelter. It was me finally finding a purpose for the hurt I had been through. My trauma, my feelings of loneliness, they weren't a weakness to be hidden anymore. They were a strength that allowed me to understand you on a level no one else could." Xiao Zhan's eyes filled with tears, a powerful realization washing over him. Their love wasn't just built on shared jokes and quiet affection, it was forged in a shared empathy, a willingness to stand in each other's storm and say, "I see you. I'm here." The gesture at the outdoor event wasn't just a sign of comfort, it was a physical manifestation of a promise that went beyond love. It was a promise to protect, to support, and to heal. It was a love that had transformed not just their present, but their past as well. Months turned into a year. The shelter gesture had become a permanent part of their public narrative, a symbol of their quiet, unwavering support for each other. At an annual awards ceremony, they were finally given a joint interview. The reporter, with a warm and genuine smile, didn't ask about rumors or scandals. She asked a simple, yet deeply personal question. "You two seem to have a bond that's completely unique in the industry," she began. "What's your secret?" The room fell silent, the cameras held at the ready. This was the final, breathtaking moment. Xiao Zhan looked at Wang Yibo, and their eyes met in a long, silent conversation that the world could only guess at. There was no longer any hesitation, no need for coded gestures or whispered words. Yibo reached over and, with an effortless, graceful motion, laced his fingers through Xiao Zhan's. He looked at the reporter, a calm, confident smile on his face, and said, "There is no secret, just a promise. To always be each other's shelter." The cameras, this time, didn't capture a fleeting gesture. They captured the beginning of a new chapter, a love story no longer defined by what was hidden, but by the quiet, breathtaking bravery of what was finally, beautifully, revealed.